Tonight, tonight we're talking about something interesting. We were all chatting 2 nights ago around boundaries and why they're important and why they matter. And somebody brought up this question, how do you know? How can you tell if she likes you? And I was like, I don't know. And so we all agreed that we would be talking about it tonight. And the reason why we're talking about it tonight is because Christopher Adams, a dear friend of the show, said, this is actually such a universal question. And this question, how can you tell? How do you know if someone likes you and if someone um, is interested and curious about you? And so we're going to be diving into this tonight because, frankly, it's one that, because it is such a universal question, I didn't want to back down from the topic just because I don't have a beautiful, concise answer myself. And so we're going to be talking about it tonight. We're going to be talking about it in the chat. But before we begin, I'm just going to lay some ground rules because the chat is important to me. This community is important to me that we're building, and we're dedicating every single night to being together, as well as every single morning. Every single morning, I come on and we talk through A Course in Miracles, a daily lesson, and in that process, we're cultivating ourselves. We're talking about who we can become and what's possible. And we're really dreaming together, in a sense, around you and me and who we were created to be in the first place. And so the Knowing Show, both the show in the morning and the show in the evening, is all about cultivating ourselves and really becoming all that we can be. But in order to do that, we need to have a place where, frankly, it feels safe to ask questions, and it feels safe to share feedback and input. And so the chat is a place where we do that, but it's if we're getting inappropriate towards each other, politically toward, or getting inappropriate towards me in just a way where I feel discomfort. And it also brings discomfort to the chat. I've had people say, Christine, like, can you do something about the chat? There's just people in here who are kind of ruining the vibe. So I'm just gonna call out your name and say, hey, thanks for being here. We don't talk like that. But feel free to stick around. And if the person repeats, then we'll go ahead and excuse them. But for the most part, I welcome your feedback. Y'all, just a little bit of context around this subject. And hi, Sai. I'm so glad you're here. I have to come in and say hello quickly before 41 viewers come in. Got to come in quickly. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming in and saying hi. We're chatting around this subject. How can you tell if she likes you? Um, as a response to a question 2 nights ago, and y'all, I grew up in a very, very conservative environment where actually the goal was that you all didn't like each other. Like, it was kind of funny in high school and middle school. It was just very innocent. You never told somebody that you liked them. At least in the community that I grew up in, that was just something that we didn't do. And so this whole question tonight is, in one sense, it feels foreign to me. I remember when I was first single after my husband left, I was like, I feel like I'm 12. Like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do dating because I didn't do it when I was in high school. And, the first person I dated was the person I married. And so I have a very small subject size, or testing size, because I've only ever dated 2 people. Um, one of them was my husband. So I'm excited to learn with you all. But when it comes to how can you tell if she likes you, one of the things that we talked about, um, I one of the things that I think is important for us to consider is, you know, what's the personality type of the person, because there's there's two very, very extreme types of people, and if you're not taking that into account and solely looking at their behavior towards you, it's going to be very confusing. So my sister, and I gave this example, I've got three sisters, and the four of us are all pretty different from each other. One of them in particular, she and I just couldn't be more different. And the way she and I would both interact with somebody that maybe we had feelings for, I might get kind of, let's take in high school. If we were both in high school, maybe I would get kind of giddy and quiet. She might get more reserved and reticent, which almost could make somebody feel like she doesn't like them because she's pulling back, when in reality she actually does. And so looking at personality types is really, really helpful in better understanding who somebody is, and then also how they interact with other people. So for us to be able to answer this question, it's kind of becoming an anthropologist in some ways, really becoming a study of others. I'm just gonna say hello to Guy that comments. Hello, I'm so glad you're here. Divorce is typical nowadays. People don't commit for life anymore. It's so true. Honestly, it's so sad. I actually felt, because of how I was raised, when I did experience divorce, I just felt so much shame over that. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Scarlet Letter, but this woman, she like has the letter A sewn into her lapel for adulteress. And that's how I felt after I got divorced. I was like, I feel like I've got a big D, like scarlet letter D for divorce sewn into me that no one cannot see when they look at me. So I think that's I have to. I just think that that's something to really consider in that regard. Is when people talk about divorce, it's like, oh, I wonder if they wanted that. um, you always wear red. Oh, it's so funny you say that. I I actually feel like I normally wear a light pink color, but I have done red sometimes. But I agree with you. I think it will be a better compliment for my skin tone. Um, so anyway, so this topic around becoming effectively like a human anthropologist to really study a person's personality, and what are they interested in? What makes them tick? What makes them come alive? And being able to engage with them in those kind of questions, because what happens is when we start engaging with somebody and we don't make it about us, and we actually get to know that person, even though we are attracted to them or we are wondering if she likes us, but if we're so interested in them, then man, they feel so seen that they get to kind of unfold and blossom and open up. And in that process, we will most likely learn a lot about them and most likely learn some of the data that we might be looking for. But I'd be curious, Guy that comments and Sai, when it comes to what's been your experience with the opposite sex? Having feelings towards you, and how have you engaged in that and known if they're interested in you? Because I think that we could all really learn from each other tonight. um, this topic is one that, again, I'm not super familiar with, but I'm excited to talk about it, because I do think it's important. Christopher said yesterday, this is or 2 days ago, he said this is something every single guy deals with. So I'd be curious from both of your perspectives, just what has resonated with you in the past when you're looking to hear and kind of know, is somebody interested? Um, Oh, Christopher, I love this. I'm blessed to be with my girlfriend. After telling you the truth of what occurred in my relationship with my child's mother, my girlfriend affirmed me I'm not that guy anymore. She still chooses me despite this. Wow, Christopher, I have chills all over. That is so powerful. Isn't it funny? I was on earlier. Christopher, were you on the show earlier with Chris Gray? I think you may have been. Um, Y'all, are we willing to tell the truth? It's it's not even just telling the truth to ourselves. It's, are we willing to tell the truth to somebody who we really, really like, and risk them not liking us in return anymore as a result of that? And so that's actually an interesting question. Are we so hungry to be liked and to be wanted. Are we willing to do that at the risk, or at not even at the risk, but at the cost of truth? Are we willing and wanting to do that at the risk or cost of, not actually them knowing us for who we really are? Comic flick cushion, hello. It's hard seeing the one that got away with someone else. Oof. I've heard that in so many words. Gosh. And it's funny, even the one that got away, yes, and I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes, it's not like I even wanna be with that person anymore, and it's still hard seeing them with somebody else, you know? I think that there's just a feeling of, well, I don't know about you, but when I see the person that I thought I was gonna spend forever with, or the person even just that I liked or loved even with somebody else, it's man, those feelings of not being enough just threaten so hard to creep in. Sai says, "A lot of women play games. No one is straightforward anymore." Oh man, that's so hard. Well, it comes down to truth, It really, really, really does. And when you say play games, do you think that they know? Do you think that they know that they're playing games, or do you think that it's out of fear? Like, are women not being straightforward because they're afraid of rejection, or because they're afraid of what might happen, or is it just, like, oh, I want to keep my options open? Like, what do you get the sense that it is? A guy that comments, arranged marriage used to be more common, where a tribe vetted your partner. Modern day marriage is a type of arranged marriage, but they're only vetted by you, typically a younger version of yourself. Wow, that is so profoundly accurate. My gosh, honestly, I look back and, I got married at 20, and I look back and I'm like, who was watching out for me? Like, my gosh, everyone let me get married and I was 20 years old, and like, I didn't know. And so it's like, yeah, you're vetting this person by yourself in isolation, and it's a young version of you so much of the time. And I've heard it said, we evolve and we effectively die every 7 years. And so you're not going to be the same person 7 years from now. So you're taking kind of a big risk in marrying this person. Um, it's really interesting. I made a commitment to myself after I saw my first marriage, that I would date for longer than 2 years, because I heard, or didn't just hear, but I read a book called Why We Love, and uh, I forget her name, Fisher, I think. Helen Fisher. And she did just a deep study on love, and found that after the 18-month mark is typically when couples really start being themselves, and they kind of unveil themselves in a way, and you really get to know the other person. They're not hiding anymore, and the honeymoon stage is effectively over. So I made that commitment to myself that I would wait 2 years, and y'all, I've seen this happen for myself and for many other people, that when it's been under 2 years, you do get married. And if it's not, maybe you don't get married within 2 years, but if you have engagement within 2 years, the time spikes, and you get a dopamine hit at the 16-month mark or 12-month mark. So you actually don't run the full cycle and run the full course. And so that's, in one sense, that's kind of dangerous, because you actually really don't know the true quality of the person that you're marrying, because you've got this massive dopamine hit midway through the cycle in the honeymoon phase. So you're almost not necessarily repeating, but you're just not going to get that consistency until it's maybe too late. Comic Flick Fusion says, and trying to be close to them, but their significant other. Oh, so when you've been, one of the hardest things is watching the person who got away, and trying to be close to them, but their significant other won't let them talk. That sucks. Oh, that's so hard. Oh gosh. Well, and it's interesting, do you want to be with them? And did you guys ever have a relationship? I guess that's a question. Did you guys ever have a relationship, or is it just like you wonder if they could have been the one? The Man in the Hat, hello. I've been loved and I've been deceived. I don't think I'm interested in being loved anymore. It's not my purpose. Mm, hmm. I've been loved and I've been deceived. Man, I hate that. I hate that for you. It's really interesting to trust again. I will say that. I have decided to trust again, and it's wild. I feel like the Man in the Hat, it is love is worth it. I will say that the real kind of love, and I'm talking about, it's like those seven loves. Were you there on Saturday when we were talking about? I think you were. We were talking about the seven types of love, like in Greek, where it's eros, the passionate love, philia, the brotherly love, pragma, the long-standing love. We've got agape, which is universal love. You've got flauta, the self-love, and ludus is, I think, the flirty love. So we've got all these different types of loves, and it's just interesting because if somebody's going to deceive you, then it's not love. So I wonder. It's important that we almost like to maintain the integrity of love, recognize what that was, because when there's deceit in there, then it's not love. Or maybe it's a passionate love void of commitment. That's not the kind of love we want. We want these loves working in tandem with each other so that, yes, it can be passionate at times, but at the end of the day, there's that commitment there. And so I just, I hope you don't give up on love. It's so beautiful and it is painful. But to your point, I don't think it should be. I don't think the flirtatious romantic love should be our purpose. I actually think universal love is a core reason why we're here, to give that to everybody, though. It's not just to one person. I'm curious your thoughts on that, but I agree with you on it not having it be our primary purpose. Um, mm, Comic book. I'm just looking at Fusion. I'm looking at your I'm single like Hugh Hefner. mm. Sigh. Women are so emotional. You have to catch them at the right nanosecond. If not, no chance. It's interesting. Hmm. Hmm. I've never dated a woman. I can't speak to that. But I do. That's honestly, it's just hard. I will say my current darling is very emotional, and it's hard, and at the same time, I'm so grateful to know what he's thinking. So, I think that there is an element there that's a blessing, but frankly, this just emphasizes why this show is so important and why the conversations we have on here is so important. We need to know and become aware of first, be aware of, understand, and then convey our own emotions to be able to become emotionally intelligent. That's a three-step process of emotional intelligence, and then you know what? Everybody suffers for it. For the men who are in relationship with women and women who are really in relationship with men and vice versa and everything in between. When we're in relationships with people who are feeling big feelings and don't know how to talk about it, that's awful. That's really, really hard. And you know what? What a blessing that they care. So it is tricky. Like people who have big emotions, people who have a big heart, people who have a big calling, a big passion and goal in life, and then they do have a big feeling for that or for maybe their family or something good, but they don't know how to harness it. There's emotional immaturity in that. And in that process of emotional immaturity, you can have dumpster fires along the way all around you because you don't know how to handle and harness your emotions. And so the ability to become aware of, understand, and convey one's emotions are really important for the purpose of loving others well and being able to exist in relationship. Guy that comments illusions are way more fun than reality. Isn't that interesting? Um, Real love is a choice. You decide to be with someone despite the person they used to be. They're a new creation, frankly, when they transparently change. Mm, hmm. And they are changing ever ever and always. That's such a beautiful thing. A new creation, frankly, when they transparently change. I love that. Especially when you get to help them. Like, guys, isn't that so cool? That's part of the beauty of relationship is that we get to help each other become the very best version that we can be. And so if we're committed to a person, we get to be committed to their transformation process. And we cannot, here's the thing. My darling says this. He's got a community and he says, I want the freedom. It's all about freedom, his community. And he talks about the freedom to evolve, the freedom to grow, the freedom to change, the freedom to change thinking, to change beliefs, to change understanding of the world, to have different experiences. Because when we do, you're right, when we do marry someone, it's a choice. And we're choosing technically that person, but we're also choosing the future them and who we know them not to be yet. And Jordan Peterson actually said this, when you get with somebody, you are seeing their best self. And so you're kind of marrying or choosing in a relationship an ideal. And you're kind of helping them remember, hey, remember how you showed up when we were dating? That's who you can be. And so there's something around what a blessing to be in a relationship where someone's going to remind you and point you back to who you can be and remind us of what's possible for ourselves. I love that. Um, right? It's like a comic flick says, it's like you thought you would never see them again under circumstances, and then you meet them out of nowhere, and they're like, yeah, I'm in a new relationship. And I'm like, oh, that's so hard. Gosh. Man, that's really, really challenging. Sigh. Of course, they know both options are opened. You should have saved you 20. You were still a kid. Yeah. Well, I think life probably would have been very different if I had not gotten married. But you know what? I don't regret it. I don't regret it, and I think that that's something that's really, really important because, man, have I learned so much and experienced so much of life. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I haven't been through so many people. I don't know. When I ended up being single, I realized I was like, well, I'm really not a playgirl, playboy, because I had the opportunity when I was single and I didn't. That's not what I chose to do for 3 years. I stayed single and really got to know myself. That's the time. This is the time when you're single, especially if you're in a relationship, yes, but if you're single and you've been in a relationship most of your life, and guys, even if we were living with our families or living with roommates, we've constantly had external stimulus. We've rarely had the opportunity to exist in the silence that allows for us to hear the whisper of the soul and hear the whisper of even just that inner voice, that inner compass, the intuary, to be taught from within. That's the Latin root of intuition. And so, how often are we actually sitting in the quiet to be able to hear and grow as a result of that? Um, Comic Flick says, "What's your perspective on relationships on social media? Like when men or females always post themselves happy together on their social media accounts." Um, I mean, honestly, I think it's all about me and my responsibility about what I'm posting. And and if I'm engaging with somebody else's content and I don't like it, then I should probably stop following them or I should probably get off my phone. It's like the frustration I feel at somebody else's content is a mirror for me about maybe jealousy or something that I want that I haven't voiced to myself. It can also, if it's bringing up anger, it's just a big red flag to me, my reaction of someone else's content because it's almost like this is what social media should be. It's almost like your journal. It's like your diary. And it's like this is where you have kind of these private moments that you're deciding to share with the world, which is fine. Um, and I can't assume their motives. But it is hard to not assume somebody's motive when it does feel in your face. Um, so yeah, I think that you and I can only handle our own reaction, and that's the only thing that is our responsibility. And, if someone's constantly posting these things that feel like it's in your face and it just feels a little showy, that's challenging and that's hard, and I would probably stop following them. Michael B, I'm glad to see you. Christopher Adams, my 2 cents on approaching someone is, well, you don't always have to be you. The law of attraction would dictate focusing on yourself and God. The one meant for you will come along and choose you. I love that. Um, I think that, what's so interesting, it does, I think that it is the attraction piece. And to your point, it's if you're doing your work, if you're focusing on you, and I love that. Like again, with radical responsibility, are we living in accordance with who we can be in that moment? Are we living to the fullest? Are we taking radical responsibility? There's this concept of like go clean your room. If you're not sure what else to do, if you want to have this big call in your life and you don't know where to start with cleaning your room. If your room's a mess, go clean that up. Become the person that is worthy of the partner that you seek. I love those comments because it calls us higher and it calls us to being bigger effectively than it calls us bigger than normally. What if we were just sitting around waiting? Marriage statistics last longer if they date 2 to 3 years. I didn't know that, but I could totally see that. Mature women are more straightforward and honest. I've noticed. I totally, I totally agree. And you know what's funny? Here's the thing. Sometimes we're just as addicted to the games as they are. And we don't even realize it. We're addicted to the drama, we're addicted to the guessing, we're addicted to the chase. And so a lot of times we find ourselves getting bored when there's not this uncertain loop. And so that isn't that a funny thing that we'll actually stay in those relationships than when we shouldn't. Detroit Sicky, hello. Christine Marie, Americans don't care about the same values as foreign couples here in the States. Hold on. Americans don't care about the same values as foreign couples here in the States. What would you say Americans value versus foreign couples do? I'm curious about that, and I'm assuming you mean born Americans versus foreign couples both living in the States. Guy that comments, I dated to marry for 14 years and now I don't plan on marrying. That's a long time. And Christopher Adams, this is to your point. I actually think it kind of brings hope. Guy that comments, I wonder if you found it encouraging, um, around kind of basically being at that point of uh, living in accordance with like being responsible for who you can be and cultivating yourself, and that person's going to come. Most people seem to think that the other person completes them. I find this ridiculous. I am complete by myself. It's hard finding someone to compliment me as opposed to being complete by me. Ooh, so good. So good. I completely agree in that regard. Christopher Adams, marriage with Christ at the head of your relationship statistically lasts longer too, guy that comments. That kind of falls with having similar values, similar life goals, and typically finding your socioeconomic equal. I thought I found love, but it turned out that I fell in love with somebody that didn't actually really exist. Oof, man, that's so hard. Guy that comments, guys are emotional too. They get angry all the time. It's funny. Yeah, I was about to say it's masking, and he says usually masking that the sadness. SGD. I don't know if you're still here, but hello. Thanks for joining. Um, Christopher Adams says, shouldn't values be something you evaluate in someone? Um, I gotta go. Thanks for coming in. I'm so glad. I'll check my email. Thank you. People omit details about themselves and they don't have red glasses on. God, the comments. I'm addicted. I'm committed to my bank account. That's so funny. Um, mm, I'm just scrolling down. Howdy. Good to see you, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for always being so encouraging in terms of don't forget to like and subscribe. Yay. Evans. Hey, my parents are narcissistic. They cause so much chaos and destructive behavior. Wow. And isn't that, it's funny, this conversation of how we engage kind of laterally with the opposite sex, so much of that is predicated on how what we mirrored and what we saw kind of like going up the line generationally. What came before us? What was the house that we were in? And how did that influence and impact the way that we show up romantically today? And, watching your parents engage that way laterally is so, 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 so devastating. Um, Brian C, how do you prefer, y'all? This is an interesting question. I'm going to put this here and pin it. How do you prefer to communicate your feelings? I'd love to know from each one of you, how do you actually prefer to communicate it? And do you do so with intention, or is it almost by mistake? Do you find yourself kind of falling into this communication style without even being intentional, but you just kind of vomit your feelings is, I guess, the best way to put it. Do you communicate with intention? And what does that look like? Evans, I'm curious from your perspective too, growing up the way that you did, how do you communicate? What was modeled for you and what have you had to maybe move away from? Um, the man in the hat, you know more about me now than most people I know. Hmm. There is something around the safety of, the screen um, that allows for the honesty to come out, I think, where man, and this is why a lot of people find uh, a haven with an AI companion because they're able to communicate and not be judged in return, and they're able to communicate and be seen even though it's by a robot. So how much better here in person? um, Brian, mistake 100%. Wow. That and then Christopher Adams, that sometimes can be the most terrifying thing to do, to be vulnerable with someone. It's so, 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 so true. Y'all, it really is to be vulnerable. And it's the most terrifying thing. And if it's with the right person, it can have the biggest returns, the biggest gains. Um, Anger is a good way to vent. Brian. The guy that comments, two takers pairing up. In marriage is a match made in heaven. Divine protection, increasing the likelihood for two givers to pair with each other. That's funny. It is really interesting. I was talking to my darling the other day, and he was in a similar dynamic as I was in our previous relationships, and we're both givers. And he was like, wouldn't the ideal be that you're both trying to outgive one another? And it reminds me of this scripture where it says, outdo one another in showing honor. And y'all, there's something around that. Man, if you've got you guys brought up values earlier. Guys, when we all are looking towards the same goals, when it's like, I want to treat you like insert, king, queen, treating you as royalty and seeing you as such and then treating you, but I have to see you that way first. And I have to remember who you are when, frankly, we're having a hard time. One of the most gracious things that I have now learned in relationship with Darling now is one time he said this, and it was the most gracious, beautiful thing. He said, that doesn't sound like you. And it was just like full stop in my tracks. And I was like, oh no, you're right. That was totally me speaking out of fear. And it was so gracious because it wasn't accusatory and it reminded me of who I am. And he just said it without getting upset or anything. And was just like, that doesn't sound like you. And it was great. It was just beautiful. So, y'all, that's such a gracious, kind way to remember. It is our job, God help us, to remember who we are, but also who our partner is, so that when they forget, that we can remind them. And how wonderful if we have a partner who reminds us of who we are when we tend to forget. That is a true helper. That is truly someone who's going to come in and make my life better if they're going to remember who I am when I forget, who God says that I am, my own potential. And then they're calling that out for me, and they're holding up the mirror and saying, hey, remember who you are. Look, aren't you awesome? And that's what we want in so many ways. The man in the hat, anger is the easiest emotion to show. It usually is a mask because the person doesn't recognize what they're really feeling. Brian, tomorrow, trivia time. What's the topic? We're going to do 9. Actually, can you guys tell me? I was planning to do 9 p.m. because it's kind of a round number. But that's also, we go live every night at 8:30. And so I'm thinking that we should maybe keep it the same. Can you guys tell me what you think? And Darth Busy says, why treat anyone differently? Treat others as they treat you. Interesting. What do you guys think about this? I think that this is a really, well, Darth, let's get to that in just a second. I want to hear what people have to say about trivia tomorrow night for timing. 8:30 p.m. to keep consistently with what time we go live every night, or 9 p.m. for the nice round number. Because I'm going to I do need to jump off soon. And thank you all for joining tonight. I've definitely been under the weather again. I actually was just taking a nap before I got on here. So let me know about timing. And then, Darth, I'll get back to your question, because I actually think that that's a really interesting point. Christopher, what a blessing. My girlfriend is definitely that kind of person to me. And for that, I'm blessed. She never fails to remind me of the man I meant to be, not the man I was. Chills. That's huge. That's so important. And those are the people to hold on to. Okay, man in the hat. I agree. Consistently 8:30. Good. All right. So we'll do 8:30 p.m. tomorrow. We're going to do 80s movies and TV shows. And then maybe we'll just move up the decades. But I also like just pop culture. So tomorrow we'll do 8:30 p.m. trivia. Do you guys want to do just 80s movies and TV shows? Or do you guys want to do that and pop culture? And then maybe the following week we can do something else. Oh, sick guy, you're so sweet. The man in the hat. Yes, I have 2 YouTube channels. I have my personal one, and then I have the one that my team manages, which has like way more content on there. The Knowing podcast. Dylan, hello. Thanks for joining. We're just talking about relationships tonight. You are welcome to hang out with us. But we're doing a trivia night tomorrow night, Dylan, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And so we were just doing some housekeeping. Dylan, stop. Thanks for coming on. Yay, 80s movies. I'm so excited. It was so fun. It was so fun last week. I totally was not. I was feeling nervous. I was like, I've never done this before. I've never even done a trivia night at like a cool bar or something. All right. I am scrolling back to your question, Darth, if you're still here. He says, why treat anyone differently? Treat others as they treat you. And I'm curious. I'd love to hear more. I'd love to hear y'all's perspective on this. Why treat somebody effectively different than they treat you? So to the quality, to the degree that somebody treats you, treat them as such. And I'm just curious to hear, your feedback. Oh, I love this. Okay, so Isaiah, hello. You can tell she really likes you if she bites her nails when looking at you, or flips her hair, acts like she dropped something, starts picking up even though there's nothing there. So basically she's really, really flirting is a good sign. I do agree with you in some ways. There's something around just like somebody who's really being silly and goofy. that is a good sign that somebody likes you. The guy that comments, my soulmate would probably sold her soul. That's why I would never meet her. Oh, jeez, that's so sad. Michael, hello. Um, the man in the hat, I was wondering where these other comments were from. I thought I was losing it. Sorry, no. Treat yourself the way you want to be treated by others. Y'all, I really this is where I think I might have an unpopular opinion here. I want to treat people according to my own ideal. And so if they're treating me poorly, I'm probably going to remove myself. Yet in so doing, I'm going to treat them with respect because that's how I want to be. That's who I want to be. And so rather than living in reaction to everybody, I want to be able to consistently show up the same regardless of how they treat me. Now, I need to have a high standard for my own treatment of my own self. And that's kind of what you're talking about, Brian, too, of treat yourself the way you want to be treated by others. Because the way we treat ourselves is the standard, which they'll be forced to meet or they're forced out, kind of thing. And so, but our treatment of them, I actually think it's important that we're not just mirroring everybody else. Now, to the point of effectively being, what's the right term? It's actually a sign of intelligence to if somebody is talking loud to kind of match them a little bit in tone or match them in energy. Like there's something that shows actually heightened intelligence to be able to match people. But at the same time, I'm not going to start treating you with disrespect if you're treating me with disrespect. What's my standard? What's my own value of how I'm going to show up to you so that I'm not just being a chameleon? And so I think that that's actually really important. And then that is the standard, yes, to which we treat ourselves, but also the standard to which we treat everybody. And if you're treating me less than that, then I'll excuse myself. I'm just looking here in the chat. Joshua Geek, hello. Um, hmm. Um, all right, y'all. I was just looking here at the chat. Um, yeah, Christopher Adams, bless those who curse you. And if someone wrongs you, why respond in the same way? Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye blinds the world. An act of mercy outweighs an act of retaliation. So, so, so beautifully said. Wow. All right, y'all. I am going to jump off. I actually need to hop over to Foundation First Marketing and do my marketing show. So I'm going to go do that. And then I'm probably going to go to bed. So thank you all so much for joining tonight. I forget who asked this question. How can you tell if she really likes you? I don't think that they joined tonight, but we talked about it like I said we would. So there we go. Have a wonderful night, my friends. I will see you tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. trivia. I'll see you then. Bye.